got one verse of scripture that I will share with you at the end of the service. It'll be Mark's Gospel, chapter 16. And it'll be at the very end of the service that I actually use that verse. We know the story. We know the story of the crucifixion. We know the story of the resurrection. I'm not going to read those verses to you today, but I do want to use that one when we get to it. The resurrection of Christ is the very foundation, it's the very power of Christianity. But before the resurrection, there was the cross. And without the cross, there would be no resurrection. And without the resurrection, the cross, or the crucifixion of Jesus, would have been just another individual dying by the most cruelest of methods and the preferred methods of the Romans. So the two are connected to the very core beliefs of Christianity. And may I say right here at the beginning that because he lives, we can live and we too have life. But may I also add that if you've never accepted Christ into your life and are living for him, then his resurrection was useless and futile for you. I know that may sound hard, that may sound cruel, but that's just the fact. You can change that, obviously, but unless you've accepted him, his resurrection is of no value. So again, the cross and the crucifixion, the cross and the resurrection are connected. So let's start with the cross. The most unlikely people can be found at the cross. And I suppose that probably one of the most surprising people that we read about in the New Testament that attended the crucifixion was Mary Magdalene. She was found there at the cross. She was found at that place of redemption. And she was, as I said, probably the least likeliest person that you would have expected to have been seen at that cross. Maybe you think you're the least likely person that can receive redemption as well. Or maybe you're thinking of someone that you know that seems too far gone to be able to receive redemption. Luke tells us that Mary Magdalene was a woman from whom Jesus had cast out 7 demons. These demons made her do terrible things. Satan was at work in her life, trying to destroy her emotionally and spiritually. In short, she was a woman from the streets, a woman of the streets. She was hopeless, and she was in a helpless situation. But that one word, but Jesus, set her free. Set her free. The cross is a place of exchange. Incomprehensible exchanges take place at the cross. When an individual goes to the cross, changes happen. You go from darkness to light. You go from discovering the power of God in your life as you allow him to take control. You move from weakness into power. You move from guilt to grace. And you exchange past failures for future hope. So a lot of changes take place at the cross. That's what Jesus did for Mary Magdalene, and that's what he can do for each one of us today. Amen. The Word says that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So if he did it 2,000 years ago for Mary Magdalene, and I believe his word, and if you believe his word, that means he can do the same today for us. Because he changes not. But redemption is costly. The redemption process and the plan of redemption is costly. For me to receive forgiveness, Jesus had to be made sinful for me and to die in my place. I can just imagine Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, we've seen the pictures, we've read the story of the Garden of Gethsemane and how he was in agony, how he agonized over what he was about to face. So I can imagine him in the Garden of Gethsemane praying for me. This is about me this morning. You have to personalize it. I'm personalizing it. He's praying for me. I just imagine him saying, God, is there any other way for that man to get to heaven except for me to go and die on the cross? Is there any way that he can do that without me having to pay for his sins on the cross? And God answers him back, son, you know that there's no other way. You know there's no other way. You know that no sin can enter into heaven. Somebody has to pay for that man's sin. Jesus went through his trial. He went through all of the sufferings. He went through all of the scourgings. And then they nailed him to a cross. And by going to that cross, Jesus was saying, in essence, okay, Father, you said that if I would take the judgment for this one man's sin, that he could go into heaven. So, Father, let the judgment fall. That's what he did. He let the judgment fall. He asked the Father to let the judgment fall on me so that that one man, me, can have an opportunity to get it. And in that moment of agony, Jesus cried from that cross that it is finished. The plan of salvation had been fulfilled. Nothing else had to be done. No more sacrifices, no more daily sacrifices, no more annual sacrifices, no more following this law, no more following that law, no more doing this, no more not doing that. He covered it all. And then the sky turned dark for 3 hours. And there was silence in heaven. Why was there silence in heaven? Because the Son of God, the second person of the blessed Godhead Trinity, had taken sin upon him for each and every one of us. For me. For me. Jesus was taking on the sins of the world. How it must have broken God's heart to have seen his Son take our place. To become sin. God can't look at sin. God turned his back on his Son so he wouldn't have to look at sin, at my sin and yours. People, that's love. Amen. Pure and simple. That's love. When they drove those nails through the hands of Jesus, they went straight to the heart of God. Straight to the heart of God. This is what the crucifixion and the resurrection story is really all about. Your children, your grandchildren probably have received Easter baskets and Easter bunnies and colored eggs, and you may have gone to Easter egg hunts and all that. And that's nice and wonderful, but it has nothing to do with Easter. So if you've gone to all of those things and you've participated in all of those things, okay, that's well and good, fine, but don't forget the real meaning. Don't forget. But getting to the cross is not only scary for Christ, it's scary for the individual as well. In fact, it can be fearful. pastor noted that over the last 30 years that we have created the most risk-averse society in history. Let me read you what he said, not my words, but his. He says, we are the most seat-belted, bike-helmeted, airbag, knee-pad wearing, private school, gluten-free, hand sanitized, peanut avoiding, sunscreen lathering, hyper-insured, massively medicated, password protected, inoculated generation in history. All done in an effort to make you safe. And you could add some to that problem. Let me share another story with you and I'll tie this in. We remember the story how Jesus sent the disciples ahead of him across the Sea of Galilee one night. The storm came up and late at night, hours into the storm, they were still struggling, laboring to get to the other side. That's when they see Jesus walking on the water towards them. And you know the rest of the story. You know how Peter got out and started walking and fell, and Peter's taken a flight for over 2,000 years for his lack of faith and taking his eyes off. I preached a sermon on that some time back. It's not Peter that should take the flak for what he did, but it's the other 11 should take the flak for what they didn't do. Peter took the initiative to get out of the boat. They never took the initiative, so they never even gave it a shot. They missed out on a once-in-a-lifetime chance to walk on water. Why? Because they were scared and they played it safe. They played it safe. You see, the only way that we can break the grip of fear that is in our heart is we have to step out of the boat. I'm not going to go back and preach that series. Don't get excited. Preach the whole series, I'm not going to. But let me give you one step. Not necessarily an easy step, but let me give you one step that will help anyone tear down the barriers of safety. And that one step is this. Stop saying no to everything just because it's scary. Stop saying no to everything just because it's scary. You see, fear is a dark room where negatives are developed. Some of you will get it by the time you go home. Nothing ever happens good if we live in fear. Fear will cause you to miss the best thing that God wants to do with you. I can't do that, God. I might mess up. But what if I fail, God? Back to Peter and 11 again. You might miss out on the best thing that God has for you just because you're scared to do it. You may be feeling that God is asking you to do something, give up something, serve somewhere, start something, or give your life to Him, but you're afraid to do it. I don't know what the future holds. I can't do that. None of us knows what the future holds. None of us may make it home this afternoon. Oh, you're talking doom and gloom. No, not. I'm talking rapture. You see, if we step out and quit letting fear control our life, we just might be on the first day of the best run in our life. Stop saying no to everything just because it's scary. So as you reflect on the true meaning of this season and the truth that He is risen, remember God is able to do far more than we can ask or even imagine. I have people that ask me all the time, it never fails when they find out we're either going to Israel or we've come back. Weren't you afraid? Weren't you scared? Did anything happen? Did you see anything? There were some people stabbed while we were over there. Well, did it stop me from going or doing anything? No. Let me ask you, did you hear on the news where somebody got shot in Charlotte last night? Did you hear it, Sister Dean? No? Policeman got shot. Is that going to keep you from going to see your daughter and your granddaughter? I didn't think it would. Just thought I'd check them. If you stop doing everything just because you're scared, you'll never get anywhere in life. You'll live in this little cocoon. "2,000 years ago, something happened that had never happened before. And stayed that way." Let me add that part. Because when I talk about the resurrection, some of you are going to say, "Oh no, Lazarus was resurrected." Yeah, but he died again. I'm talking about died, staying dead, or coming back. Lazarus went back ahead and do it again. Don't you think he was probably mad at God? I've often thought about it. That's just kind of a side note. I mean, after what he had experienced, and he had to come back to this. But something happened 2,000 years ago that's never happened before. A few broken-hearted people went to the tomb of a man that they had been serving for over 3 years, a man that they loved tremendously, and just died. They had watched soldiers beat him and scourge him, crucify him, pierce his side. They were told by an angel that he wasn't there. The tomb's not empty. He's not here. He's risen. That one fact, that single piece of news on that first resurrection morning is much more important than anything else that has ever happened in the history of the world. But the reason for that is not simply that the tomb was empty. It wasn't so much about where Jesus wasn't, it's where Jesus was that was important. Let me explain. All of a sudden, he is with Mary when you go back and read the story. He was communicating to her. He was saying, you don't have to go through life being afraid anymore. Not of anything, not even of death. All of a sudden, he's with Peter. He's saying, you don't have to go through life feeling guilty anymore because you failed me. Not even because you failed me and denied me before I died, because I'm restoring you. That wasn't where he wasn't, that's where he was. He was with Thomas. His message to him was, you don't have to go through life doubting anymore. You don't have to go through life doubting not about God, not about me. You don't even have to go through life doubting about yourself. You can live with faith, and you can live with hope, and you can live with joy. Now that's good news, people. Well, let me ask the question, is it true news? You all said it was good news, but is it true news? If it's true, then the resurrection means that your past is forgiven no matter what you've done. The resurrection story is either the biggest hoax that's been presented to mankind or it's true. It's the only two options. So no matter what you've done because of the resurrection, we have hope. So if you need a measure of hope, then this true news is very good news. Or this very good news is true news, whichever way you want to say it. Because it's both. Now, there are some that say Jesus couldn't possibly have risen from the dead. There's not a chance that kind of thing just does not happen. The body had to have been stolen. Well, let me just stop and delve into some of these questions, if you will, for a few moments. If the body was stolen, then who stole it? Some say that the disciples took the body. Well, when you think about it, they have absolutely no motive whatsoever in stealing the body. They were not highly motivated to this unspeakable privilege of living as penniless evangelists, wandering through the rest of their life, being beaten, whipped, thrown in jail, and put to death. So they didn't have any incentive to steal the body, did they? You know, people die for their faith all the time. They die for their faith all the time. They believe it's true. But I don't know of people who will die for something that they don't believe in. Just a thought. Nobody knowingly dies for a lie. The disciples were so certain that they staked their life on it. Each one of them staked their life on it. And they lost their lives because of it. I don't think the disciples did. So let me give you a few more facts regarding the truth of the resurrection. The first obvious fact was that the breaking of the seal that stood for the power and the authority of the Roman Empire. Now, you have to understand that the consequences for breaking that seal were extremely severe. If anyone had broken the seal and they had been caught, it meant execution by crucifixion upside down. Now, people feared breaking the seal. They didn't want to break the seal of Jesus for that as well. Jesus' disciples should. I mean, they had already shown that they were cowards. They were there when he was crucified. So they're not going to go break the seal for fear of being crucified as well. You know, Peter denied him 3 times. Another obvious fact after the resurrection was the empty tomb. Now, the disciples that were following Christ, they didn't go off to Rome, they didn't go off to Greece or anywhere else to preach that Christ had been raised from the dead, but they went right back to that city where Jesus had been put on trial and was crucified to begin with. So if what they were teaching was false, wouldn't it be pretty evident that it was inaccurate as to what they were teaching? The tomb was too notorious, if you will, to even be denied. Both Jewish and Roman sources, traditions, admit that the tomb was empty. A member of the Jewish High Court in Sanhedrin, Gamaliel, put forth the suggestion that the rise of Christian movement was God's doing. He could not have done that if the tomb were still occupied or if the Sanhedrin knew the whereabouts of Christ's body. If the Sanhedrin knew where the body was, if it had been stolen, why didn't they produce it and just dispel the fact that it had been risen? They couldn't because it wasn't. Fact number 3, the large stone was moved. On that Sunday morning, the first thing that impressed the people that approached the tomb was the unusual position of this stone. Now, understand, this is not a small boulder. It's a 1.5 to 2 ton stone. And when you go back and read it, all of the gospel writers mention it. They saw that the resurrection described the position that it having been rolled not just away from the tomb, but the entire sepulchre. It was moved way away. So I don't think if you're trying to get in to steal a body, you're going to move it far away. It's just enough to get it in so you can get in. Now, if the disciples wanted to come in and tiptoe around the sleeping guards, then roll the stone away and steal Jesus' body, how could they have done that without the guards ever being made aware of it? Fact number 4, the Roman guards, they fled. That's one of them. They left their place of responsibility. Now, Roman military discipline was so exceptional that they feared the wrath of their superiorities with the possibility of death if they left the post. If even the minutest of details was left out of their duties, they would be severely punished. And one way a guard was put to death was by being stripped of his clothes and then burned alive in a fire that was started with his garments. And if it was not apparent which soldier had failed in his duty, then lots would be drawn to see which one of the guards would be executed. So if one had fallen down on his watch, don't you think the others would have taken taken up his place so that they wouldn't have fallen into that type of condemnation. Fact number 5, the grave clothes tell a tale as well. John looked over to the place where the body of Jesus was, and there were the grave clothes in the form of a body, slightly caved in, just like the chrysalis of a cocoon. There, but just down. That should be enough to make a believer out of most anyone. In fact, John never got over it. The first thing that stuck in the minds of the disciples was not the empty tomb. That's not what they talk about when you read the story of the gospel writer. It's not about the empty tomb. It's that the empty grave clothes. It made a lasting impression on the disciples. Fact number 6, his appearance was confirmed. Christ appeared on several occasions after that first resurrection morning. Paul says that Jesus appeared to more than 500 of his followers at one time. 500. So the resurrection of Christ that morning is the greatest comeback story in history. The hope that he brings, the hope that he brings you, the hope that he brings me, can allow us to come back as well. Back from fear, back from despair, and back from defeat. Because of his resurrection, defeat is not the end. You can come back from defeat. His word tells us that. That's the miracle of the resurrection. The Apostle Peter was able to identify with that story. We know that Peter failed. He fell, and he fell hard. He fell hard. Peter is the one who said to Jesus, if you put it in today's vernacular, hey, Jesus, the rest of these disciples, they're wimps. They're going to leave you, they're going to fail, but not me, I got your back. And we know that he didn't have his back. He wasn't there for him. Not once, not twice, but 3 times turned his back on his master. Then he swore. The word says he cursed. Then the little girl scared him away. So he runs away, leaving Jesus just when Jesus needed him the very most. 3 days later, Peter hears Jesus is alive. He's alive. Now, if you're Peter, this is either really good news or it's really bad news. You see, I can just imagine, just because we're all human and the disciples are humans like we are, that the other disciples are telling Peter, hey, Jesus is alive, you're going to get it now. You're really in for it. You're going to get it now. You're history. But in reality, don't most of us feel the same way from time to time? If Christ is alive and I show up to church, am I going to find forgiveness or are they going to condemn me? We don't like to hear it, we don't like to say it, but the fact is, churches will do that to you. What's that person doing in church? You know what they've done? You know what now the life they live and they're in church? That's what happens. People don't want to come to church, and if they do, it's, am I going to be forgiven? Am I going to be accepted? Or am I going to be condemned? Do I have a future, or is God done with me and ready to destroy me? I told you I had one verse of scripture I wanted to share with you here towards the end. I hope you turn to Mark chapter 16, verse 7. Mark 16, verse 7. A lot of people miss this. The angel here is announcing that Jesus is alive and he wants to meet with the disciples. And the angel says, go your way, tell his disciples, and then the next 2 words, and Peter. And Peter. Now that wasn't just an afterthought, oh, by the way, don't forget Peter. That's not what it's saying here. To me, that's awesome. Those 2 words are awesome. Essentially, the angel is saying, make sure you tell Peter. Make sure that Peter knows that Jesus still loves him. Make sure you tell Peter that Jesus wants to meet with him. Make sure you tell Peter that he's got a future. Make sure you tell Peter that he still matters. See, he could have said, go and tell the disciples, and then he goes before him in the Galilee. He didn't have to say, and Peter. He wanted to drive the point home, be sure you don't leave out Peter. Because I know how Peter feels. He failed me 3 times. He's down in the dump. He feels like he has no future. He feels like he has no hope. I want you to give him this good news. So be sure and tell Peter. If you forget everybody else, don't forget Peter. And here's what Mark is saying to us. Christ's resurrection means that your past, no matter what it is or what it was, is not unforgivable. No matter what it is or what it was, it's not unforgivable. In other words, you can't walk too far away from God that He cannot reach you. But preacher, you don't know what I've done. I don't, and I don't care. But more importantly, God doesn't care. You can't walk too far away from God that He can't reach you. I've told you before, I'll share it to you one more time as we try to bring this to a close. God can't love you any more than He does. He's already given you the very best He has for you. And He can't love you any less. And what He did for Peter, He's ready to do for each and every one of us. He shows up in your life not to condemn you, but to wrap His arms around you and say, I love you. That's what Peter discovered, and that's what we too can discover, and that's what we can experience from God today. We can bounce back from defeat. I want to close this service by going all the way back before the crucifixion. In an upper room, Passover meal. We call it the Last Supper, when they shared it together. I'm going to ask everyone that can and is going to participate in the Last Supper to come around the altar. Dad, I know you don't like to drink communion out of the wooden communion cup, but once every 10 years won't hurt you. I don't think so.